if you're really interested in this, can be a good way to go. I do suggest a few things for it. If you are a slow writer, this is generally going to be bad for you. Not always. You kind of have two main archetypes for this, and one is book is released, and then marketing! You know, you just go on a blitz. You make your platform, and you have your book, and you price your book fairly high for a self-published ebook, and you just market and market and market and market. The other model is you write a ton of stuff, and you don't focus on that one book. You still have your platform and things, but you just write as much as you can and release as much as you can, and you price a lot of it at the 99-cent price point, knowing that you're going to get a much smaller royalty, trying to get as many people to read your books as possible to get a following, whereupon you price later books in a series more expensively. This is what Amanda Hocking did. Her early books were 99 cents or even free, and the later books were $2.99, and she just wrote a lot of them. Joe Conrad does this as well, and it has a steady stream of books coming out. A lot can really just mean 3 or 4 a year, which, you know, that's still a lot, but remember, these are probably 80,000 word books, a lot of them. So you're writing shorter books, and you are putting them out there and pricing the early ones cheap, and then using your platform to try and get people hooked. Or you're writing very infrequently, and this is really hard in the self-published world. This is much better for the traditional publishing method, because if it takes you 2 years to write a book, it's going to be really hard to spend the time you need marketing and whatnot to make things take off as a self-published writer, whereas you're better off probably shooting for that publisher. I still think everybody's still better off shooting for that publisher because of what they do for you. Let's give the counter argument now. We've talked a lot about this. This is very viable. Don't let me tell you that. Don't let what I'm going to say next scare you off of this if you're interested in it, because it is. But it is a lot of work. I am granted an extraordinary case, but Tor spent six figures marketing Alloy of Law. Okay? A lot of that money, you know, the 70% that you're not seeing, the publisher is paying to a lot of people to do a lot of things for your books, even when you're a new writer. And so having a legal department, for example, having an actual cover designer who hires cover illustrators to do a great illustration, and they will spend on even a new author, they'll spend $5 grand on a cover easy. For a lot of more popular authors, they're spending 20 grand on a cover, if you count the time of all the design work and things like this. They will give you an advance up front to live on while you write your next book, and they will assign an editor to you whose job is partially to keep you going and writing, and is used to dealing with the writers. They can get what we call co-op space. Co-op space is a great hidden thing that a lot of self-published authors don't know about, and that is every book that is on the front page of Amazon Anywhere, or that goes out. You know, if you belong to Amazon, you get emails that say, hey, this person's new book came out. I know you bought these. The publisher pays for them to send those. You don't get in those unless you pay. That's what's called co-op. If you walk into Barnes & Noble, all the books at the front of the bookstore got there because the publisher paid to get them there. Almost all the books on the end caps got there because the publisher paid them to get there. There are a few places where the bookstore can put up like this is a favorite of the bookstore type thing, so those don't necessarily get paid for. Those are legit. It's not like even the staff recommends. Those aren't paid for. But everything that's got a sticker on it that says any sort of thing, 20% off this week, the publisher paid to get that sticker on it and put there. On Amazon, anything on any page that publicizes it, except maybe the people who bought this also bought this. I don't think that one's co-op. But everything else, I believe, is co-op. The email marketing, all of this stuff is paid for by the publisher. Because it's that shelf space thing. To sell books, you have to get books in front of people's eyes. It's called co-op because a lot of times it's not actually paying. Sometimes it is. I think the email blasts are actually just paid for it. I could be wrong on any part of this, by the way, any of the specifics, because I don't do this. So but I'm pretty sure those emails. In fact, I've been told those emails are by my publisher. So, but it's called co-op because a lot of times what they're doing is they say, okay, we will put the book in the front of Barnes & Noble for you. Barnes & Noble says, but if it sells, you have to give us an extra $1. It's co-op because if the book sells, they get an extra $1, not we're paying you money up front. Though some of the things are, we're paying you money up front, but a lot of them are cooperative marketing like that. And Barnes & Noble only has a certain amount of space up there. They don't want books up there that won't sell then because they get part of their money off of the book selling. It gives them an incentive to make sure it actually gets up there rather than gets forgotten in the stockroom and things. But so they don't offer that space to books that the publishers can't convince them will sell a lot of copies. And so the self-published authors don't get that space because unless they have a proven track record, the publisher can come in and say, hey, we're spending $100 grand marketing this book. It'll sell. Give us the co-op space. They'll be like, all right, you can have 3 weeks of co-op at this price. The self-published person comes in and says, hey, I'd like to buy co-op space. Sure, I'll give you an extra $1 out of every book I sell. And they'll be like, ha, you're not going to sell any, so we're not giving it to you. So this is a great hidden thing that is still a barrier to entry. Self-publishing is democratizing things. Word of mouth is still by far the best way to sell books. But the second best way is to have the book in front of people's eyes so that they can impulse buy it. And almost all of that is controlled by co-op, even still. Despite how much the ebook readers like to say, self-publish with us and skip the middleman, they're still giving all the co-op space to the middleman because the middleman can generate a lot of those sales. So, questions about self-publishing?
If you're doing ebooks, don't you lose out on chances to get into the smaller bookstores a lot?
You do. However, you can also do a two-pronged attack by selling the ebook, seeing how well it does, using some of that money if you actually do sell well to then approach independent booksellers in your area and get it shelved. And if you're really something, even get it national. That's hard to do, but you can.
Well, I know some smaller bookstores are now starting to sell ebooks too. Like I know
yes, they are.
English bookstore is starting.
Yeah, Mark.
What about getting reviews?
All but impossible. Kirkus, and it might be Kirkus. Kirkus, I think, started up one where you could pay to have them review for you, but then put on it like Kirkus Discoveries or something like that as a Kirkus is we paid to get this review. All but impossible, but on the flip side, the reviews are basically non-important. Reviews are what the booksellers will pay attention to know if they want to stock the book. The reviews are what librarians will pay attention to whether they put it in libraries. But if you don't have a physical product, the review is not going to be that important. How many people here read Publishers Weekly and ever have? Okay, we do have one Publishers Weekly, two of you, but most people are not. New York book reviews, New York Times book reviews, a lot more people read, but science fiction fantasy doesn't get reviewed there anyway. So anyway, reviews should not be a major concern to you unless you write YA books and you're trying to get into particularly the school libraries. Now, cover quotes are something else. Public pays better attention to cover quotes than they do to reviews. You're not going to get good reviews as a science fiction fantasy writer really anyway. I mean, you can look and see like the best people. George Martin gets good ones. Neil Gaiman gets good ones. But most of us don't even get any attention from them. And like when the Washington Post mentioned me in and Brandon's got an interesting magic system, in an article that wasn't about me, it was just about something, Tor plastered that all over my book, so they're so excited. I'm like, this is a lame review. It's like, that's kind of interesting. And they're like, it's kind of interesting, Washington Post. Who cares? But to them, that's like a really big deal. Robert Jordan once got an article in the New York Times, and that review has become like the glowing pinnacle of what Tor has achieved, having this great review in the New York Times. It's just so hard to get genre fiction to get any attention. Children's has a lot of the same.
Why do they hate us like that?
You know, they don't like to read it. So, and the people who read those newspapers don't like to read what we write either. So they're writing reviews to their market, and books that their market might be interested in, and we're not something that their market reads. So there's really no, it's not something to be bitter about. I mean, when Locust didn't review me, I was a little bit annoyed. Locust didn't review The Way of Kings. But when the New York Times doesn't review you, I mean, New York Times readers don't read our books by their demographic. Sure, some of them do, but you know, it's not a good demographical choice.
What about sending a copy to the buyers for, like the local buyers for Barnes & Noble and stuff like that?
There are no local buyers. Everything happens in New York for the chains. There is virtually no chance of getting into Barnes & Noble except on a case-by-case basis where you go into the bookstore and ask them if they'll shelve your book. Once in a while you get lucky and they will. Because the manager can shelve a book, but you have to go to each bookstore individually and see if they will.
And then if they sell out, they contact you, or do you have to keep checking it?
You keep checking it. And usually they're going to say no. There's so many people coming in wanting the book shelved. What they'll probably say is, you can have a signing and we'll sell them on consignment, which means that you'll get like 10%, which usually for a self-published writer means losing money. Because but that can happen. The local book community is actually pretty friendly to self-published writers, but you should view all of these things as publicity, not as money-making if you're self-publishing.
And chances are, they're only going to shelf your book if it like appeals to a local market. Like
Yeah.
here, if it was LDS fiction, they might shelf it.
Yeah.
Or if you're like in
Did you
Montana.
work in a bookstore?
No, but in Montana or something, if it was like outdoorsy stuff, then they
Yeah.
would shelf it.
I mean, you do see some getting shelved. The Crystal Moon dude, I think, gets some bookstore store presence. He's worked really hard. You can Google the Crystal Moon guy. He's interesting. He's always at Costco. Have you seen a dude selling his fantasy? Some of you guys seen him, Crystal Moon dude at Costco? He's like always at Costco. No, he's like cloned himself. There's like 6 of him. And he's an interesting guy. But you are better off when you're self-publishing, trying to see if you can get attention online. Or if you've got a physical product, bookstore visits, they're so hyper-saturated now because Shadow Mountain got into it. Shadow Mountain, which is the church's fantasy imprint. It's not really a fantasy imprint, but it's their national imprint, but they do a lot of fantasy. Brandon Mull and Obert Sky. He was the Baptist or barbecue guy. I don't remember what his real name is. All those guys, it was Levin Thumps that he did. All those, they figured out what Christopher Paolini was doing, and they started doing it hardcore gung-ho. And now, if you go to the schools, they're like, yeah, we have 50 people asking to do this. We don't want you to come shill your book in our school. Go away. Some of them still like it, but it's become a much harder thing to do because everyone jumped on the bandwagon. Used to be that you would get paid to do a school visit, and a lot of authors made their money going to do school visits, and they would do these very big in-depth presentations where they go to different classrooms and stuff. Now school visit means big assembly where Shadow Mountain shoots t-shirts at people and throws a big party. And these guys are really good at it. Mull has got a great school visit presentation. It was really a smart move on their part, but it's free and it's changed the market dramatically. So anyway, they did a very good job with it, but they did really saturate it, like I said. Mark, it sounds like you're really considering the self-publishing thing.
Oh no, I don't. Well, I hope I don't have to.
But anyway,
I want to know everything I can about it.
comes down to that whole platform thing. It's really going to help you self-publishing. Go look at what Dean Wesley Smith and Joe Conrath are saying. What Dean's method is he writes a ton of short stories, puts them in collections so he can sell them at $2.99 for 5 stories, does a cover in 30 minutes, puts it on there, and tries to have like hundreds of these on there, with each of them selling like 100 copies a year. That's his method. And if he can do this, that's how he's approaching it. I don't know what I think of that method, but you can read about it yourself.